7 healthy habits na go na go. Move more, eat right. Ang tamang pagkain at pagkilos ang pundasyon sa malusog na pamumuhay. Ngunit sa Pilipinas, marami pa rin ang hindi nakakakain ng tama at hindi sapat ang ehersisyo. 2 sa 10 bata na wala pang 5 taong gulang ay kulang sa timbang, habang 1 sa 10 bata naman ang sobra sa timbang at obese. Sa tamang diet at ehersisyo, maiiwasan natin ang lumalalang banta ng malnutrisyon at obesity. Maiiwasan din natin ang mga non-communicable diseases tulad ng diabetes, sakit sa puso at stroke. Para tayo'y manatiling malusog sa anumang edad, sundin ang mga tips na to. Gumalaw ng 30 to 60 minutes kada araw. Tangkilikin ang active transport tulad ng pagbibisikleta at paglalakad. O gumawa ng mga aktibong gawain tulad ng paglilinis ng bahay. Kumain ng healthy at iwasan ang mga pagkain mataas sa asukal, asin at taba. Ugaliin ang pagbasa at pagsuri ng mga food labels. Iwasan ang mga inuming mataas sa asukal tulad ng soft drinks at uminom ng di bababa sa 8 baso ng tubig kada araw. Pag naghahanap ka ng panghimagas, kumain ng prutas sa halip ng mga minatamis tulad ng cake at ice cream. Tara na at labanan ang malnutrisyon at mga sakit. Ugaliin nating mag-move more, eat right, for a healthy Pilipinas. Todo 7, 7 healthy habits na go na go. Be clean, live sustainably. Ang kalusugan natin nakaugnay sa kalinisan ng ating kapaligiran. Kasama rito ang malinis na hangin, ligtas at malinis na tubig para sa lahat, wastong pagtatapon ng basura at iba pa. Ang hindi wastong pangangalaga ng kapaligiran ay nagpapalala o nagiging dahilan din ng climate change. Lagpas 5 milyong Pilipino ang naaapektuhan nito. Umaabot sa 20 bagyo ang dumadaan sa Pilipinas kada taon. Apektado ang tirahan at kabuhayan ng mga tao. Dulot din ito ang pag-apaw ng mga ilog na nagiging sanhi ng matinding pagbaha. Ang dala nitong maruming tubig baha at iba pang pinsala ay nagiging sanhi ng mga sakit, impeksyon at kamatayan. Kaya sama-sama nating pangalagaan ang ating kapaligiran para iwas sakit at mapanatiling malusog ang katawan. Sundan natin ang mga tips na to. Maglakad o magbisikleta para maiwasan ang paggamit ng mga sasakyang nagbubuga ng usok na nagpaparumi sa hangin at kapaligiran. Bawasan din ang pagkonsumo at pagbili ng mga bagong bagay, lalo kung hindi naman kinakailangan. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Hindi natin maiiwasan ang mga kalamidad, pero kaya itong paghandaan bago pa ito dumating. Magtanim ng mga puno para mabawasan ang pagbaha at gumawa ng survival go bags. Let's be clean, live sustainably. Todo ang kalusugan kapag malinis ang kapaligiran. Todo 7 healthy habits na go na go. Care for yourself, care for others. Alam mo ba na 1 in 5 Filipinos ay may mental health problems? Ito ay ang ikatlong pangkaraniwang health condition sa bansa, lalo na sa kabataan. Ang depression ay isa sa maraming uri ng mental health disorder. At ang Pilipinas ang may pinakamaraming kaso ng depression sa Southeast Asia. Ang mental health kasing importante rin ng physical health. Para maingatan ang mental health mo at ng iyong mga minamahal sa buhay, gawin ang mga sumusunod. Mag-exercise o tumutok sa mga hobbies. Nakakabawas ito ng stress at pwede ka pang humubog ng mga bagong skills. Mag-breathing exercises, tulong pangpakalma. Breathe in for 4 seconds. Hold breath for 7 seconds. And exhale for 8 seconds. Gawin ito 4 times, twice a day. makipag-connect sa iyong pamilya at mga kaibigan. Ipadama ang iyong pagmamahal sa regular na pakikipag-usap, pag-text o pag-video call sa kanila. Care for yourself, care for others. Pangalagaan ang isa't isa para sa malusog na kaisipan. Todo pito, 7 healthy habits na go na go. Don't smoke, lessen alcohol, say no to drugs. Ang pag-abuso sa alak, yosi at droga ay di lang delikado sa kalusugan ng gumagamit. Nakakaapekto rin ito sa kalusugan at kaligtasan ng iba. Ang problemang ito ay laganap sa Pilipinas at sa buong mundo. Kaya alagaan natin ang kapakanan ng bawat Pilipino para supuin ang adiksyon sa alak, yosi at droga. Gawin ang mga sumusunod. Tigilan at huwag simulan ang paninigarilyo. Lahat ng uri nito ay nakakasama sa kalusugan. Ang paninigarilyo ay sanhi ng mga sakit sa puso at baga. Kahit hindi ka alcoholic, drink moderately. Huwag lumagpas sa 4 na baso ng inuming nakakalasing anuman ang okasyon. Ang sobrang pag-inom ng alak ay masama para sa iyong kalusugan. Kilalanin ang adiksyon bilang isang problema sa kalusugan na maaaring matugunan sa medikal na pamamaraan. Pumunta sa mga drug rehabilitation facilities ng DOH o pamahalaang lokal kung ikaw o ang iyong kakilala ay nangangailangan ng tulong. Tara na! Suportahan ang ating kapwa na magtagumpay laban sa adiksyon. Don't smoke, lessen alcohol, say no to drugs. Tawagan ang Substance Abuse Helpline o Quitline sa mga numbers na ito. Todo pito, 7 healthy habits na go na go. Do no harm, but safety first. Taon-taon, umaabot sa 12,000 Pilipino ang namamatay dahil sa mga aksidente sa kalsada. Noong 2019 naman, kada 13 minuto, may isang Pilipino na pinapatay, pinagsasamantalahan, ninanakawan o nagiging biktima ng karahasan. Ang karahasan at kapahamakan nagiging sanhi ng mga problema sa physical and mental health at problemang pinansyal. Pwede rin itong humantong sa kamatayan. Pero maaaring iwasan ang mga problemang ito sa tamang paghahanda. Para laging ligtas, tandaan ang mga tips na to. Gawing ligtas ang ating mga kalsada. I-report sa tamang otoridad kung may mga sagabal o sira sa daan. Mag-ingat sa pagmamaneho. Para sa mga nagmomotorsiklo at nagbibisikleta, huwag kalimutan ang pagsusuot ng helmet tuwing babiyahe. Huwag magmaneho kung ikaw ay walang lisensya, inaantok o nasa impluwensya ng alak o droga. Mag-report ng kaso ng pananakit o pang-aabuso sa kinauukulan. Pumunta o tumawag sa Women and Children Protection Unit sa mga ospital ng DOH o sa PNP kung kailangan. Gumawa tayo ng ligtas na kapaligiran para sa lahat. Always do no harm. Put safety first for a healthy Pilipinas. Todo pito, 7 healthy habits na go na go. Practice safe sex. Ang sexual and reproductive rights ng bawat Pilipino ay dapat inaalam, nirerespeto at ipinaglalaban. Ngunit dahil sa iba't ibang balakid, maraming suliranin ang kailangan pang matugunan. Noong 2017, 70% ng lahat ng mga babaeng edad 15 hanggang 17 ay maagang nabuntis. Panahon na para itaguyod ang sexual and reproductive health. Simulan na natin sa mga hakbang na ito. Pag-usapan ng sex sa iyong pamilya. Huwag mahiya. Sa tamang kaalaman, maiiwasan ang di planadong pagbubuntis at mga sexually transmitted infections. Di pa kayo ready magka-baby? Alamin ang iba't ibang contraceptive at family planning methods. Magtanong sa doktor o health worker tungkol sa pros and cons ng mga ito. Pigilan na ang stigma sa sex. Magtanong, makinig, makipag-usap at maging supportive. Let's practice safe sex for a healthy Pilipinas. Todo pito. 7 healthy habits ng go na go. Get vaccinated. Noong 2017, isa sa bawat 5 batang Pilipino, edad 1 hanggang 2, ang di nabakunahan kontra tigdas at polio. Isa ito sa mga naging dahilan ng pagkalat ng tigdas at polio outbreak noong 2019. Kaya para sa kalusugan ng lahat, ugaliin nating magpabakuna. Protektahan natin ang mga bata at kabataan sa tulong ng pagbabakuna. Kayang-kayang iwasan ang mga sakit na nakamamatay o nagdudulot ng kapansanan. May bakuna rin ang mga nakatatanda. Kumonsulta sa inyong healthcare worker tungkol sa mga vaccines na nararapat para sa matatanda. Magpabakuna. Huwag matakot. Sa mahabang panahon, ang bakuna ay napatunayan ng ligtas at epektibo. Kaya let's get vaccinated for a healthy Pilipinas. Todo pito. 7 healthy habits ng go na go. Move more, eat right.
Good morning, Karaga. I know it's a beautiful Tuesday morning. It's the second day of the week and it's 9:14 on my clock. I know that a lot of us has just started our day, and since it's the second day of the week, I know it's still very busy and hectic for a lot of you guys. But here we are today for our Mental Health Month special brought to us by DOH CHD Karaga. And of course, we are going to discuss a very important topic because we advocate care for all. Of course, before anything else, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Cristel Delmar, and for today's discussion, I will be your moderator. And of course, as we continue with today's activity, just like any others, we would want to feel that we are connected with each other, even though we're just having this live virtually. Of course, we would like to start this event with an invocation to be followed by the national anthem.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Good morning once again, Karaga. We are back. And of course, I know that for a lot of us, there are a few live viewers on Facebook who have greeted us and joining us today. We have a lot of comments right here, and I would like to especially acknowledge our friends from DepEd Bislig City Division. We have actually invited a lot of people to join and watch us here live on Facebook. So if you can do your share, do your part in sharing this live activity, it will really go a long way. So of course, feel free to do so. We have actually official hashtags so we can find you online. We have hashtag you matter and hashtag mental health for all. By the way, welcome to Mental Health Series Day 1. Day 1 pa lang po ito. We are going to have this activity for 3 days straight. And for each day, we are going to discuss different topics which will really be essential in promoting mental health, especially now that we are celebrating the mental health month for the month of October. Of course, with that mentioned, I know that you understand that we all play a very important role in promoting mental health. Of course, as mentioned kanina, if you were watching the videos prior to this live, 1 of 5 Filipinos are actually having mental health issues. And sabi ko nga kanina, all of us play a certain role in eradicating that or helping people who are actually suffering. We are in the middle of the pandemic. It's all tough for us. Everything is not easy. We are all facing drastic changes for the past year, and it's not an easy adjustment. So wala tayong ibang kagapay kundi yung isa't isa. So as we continue with today's celebration, of course, it's important that we do our part in helping one another, whichever will be beneficial for us. So, of course, as we continue, we're going to say hello to our friends on Facebook kasi naman we would like to feel that we are together in this activity. Virtual man, but of course I can see that a lot has joined us online. So good morning from our friends from Tesda, Surigao del Sur. Good morning, Ma'am Mariel Toyko. Of course, we also have friends online who are watching from the DSWD Home for Girls. So I like it because we have like representatives from different agencies, and of course I hope that even the younger generation are watching like right now. So it's really important that we can share this live to other to our friends so that we can have a larger audience and we can have an interactive discussion later on, especially that we have invited experts to discuss matters about mental health later on. Good morning, Ma'am Nancy. Looking forward to a fruitful discussion. Yes, me too. And of course, from DepEd Agusan del Sur, good morning, Ma'am Arlene Mayas Batausa. And of course, actually, we have 61 viewers right at this time. That's a pretty good number to start early in this morning. I'm sure meron pang ibang nagkakape at this time or others are on their way to work wherever you are since this is a live activity. We can reach you. Just share our live here on Facebook so we can also discuss this with all the other friends we have online. It's important that we play our role to spread awareness, especially because we don't get to discuss these topics every day. Ang cute. May nag-comment pa, have a great hair day, everyone. Good morning from DepEd Bislig City Division. So of course, later on, we would like to encourage all our friends online. If you have questions, if you have points to clarify, we will actually have an open discussion later on. And if, of course, those questions will be entertained by the experts that we have invited to join us on today's live. So feel free to drop your comments below, your questions below. It will be entertained and it will be very much appreciated. Again, if you're going to share our live today, you can use the hashtags hashtag you matter and hashtag mental health from for all. And again, we are on our mental health series day 1. Tatlong araw po natin gagawin to. It's very special and very important that we finish the 3-day activity because we have very interesting topics that are really gonna help us to spread awareness regarding mental health. All right, so to formally begin today's activity, since this is an activity initiated by the Department of Health CHD Caraga, we are going to formally start the event with the opening message from the regional director himself. Let us welcome Dr. Cesar Cashon.
Ito na? Okay, good morning everyone. My warmest greetings to all. Today we gather in celebration of the National Mental Health Week. As to commemorate this significant event anchored to the theme, Mental Health Care for All, Care for Yourself, and Care for Others, we underscore the integral part of mental health in achieving our vision of a healthy Pilipinas. Further, this serves as a timely reminder that fostering resilient communities cannot be completely realized without raising awareness and addressing the current and long-term effects of mental illnesses. Since the onslaught of COVID-19 pandemic, we've been grappling with the profound disruptions in all fundamental aspects of our society, with essential health measures and interventions set in place to mitigate the spread of the virus. Myriad changes and restrictions in our everyday routines and livelihoods are inevitable. As this health crisis wears on far longer than anticipated, these ongoing and necessary public health measures leave many individuals feeling vulnerable to experiences that could potentially lead to poor mental health outcomes. While we struggle to overcome the impact of COVID-19, we must ensure and fortify mental health as part of the universal agenda and cultivate an environment that provides and promotes a safe space for anyone to be able to openly share and seek help without the fear of being stigmatized. Furthermore, the evolving nature of this global pandemic has pushed to the forefront the importance of instilling a shared sense of priority over our health and well-being in order to pave way for a healthy functioning society. That is to say, even the slightest shift in how we approach these issues creates a resounding impact that will reverberate for the generations to come. As we endeavor joint effort and coordination this time of unprecedented adversity, let us remain steadfast, inspire revolutionary change in our collective mental health awareness, acceptance, and support, especially among key decision makers and the general public. In the midst of this precarious new normal that we inhabit, we must adopt a sense of urgency and be committed to take action with unwavering intent. Let us harness and emulate to the best of our ability and judgment the spirit of oneness and cultivate mental health and wellness as a way of life. Together, let us be champions and advocates for mental health care for all. Daghang salamat sa inyong tanan ug maayong buntag sa usapa.
Thank you so much. That was once again our Regional Director for DOH CHD Caraga, Dr. Cesar Cachon. So thank you so much. He has actually pointed out a very wonderful aspect in mental health. No? Sabi niya kanina, even the slightest shift creates a resounding impact. So we should be champions and advocates for mental health. Dapat tayong lahat. Not chosen people, everyone should give it a go. So it's important that as we care for ourselves, we all also care for each other. So, of course, at this point in time, we are going to talk about mental health here in the Philippines. I'm going to call the Non Communicable Disease Cluster Head Medical Officer for Doc Agnes Colliantes, MD, MPM.
Yes, good morning everyone. Maayong buntag. So a very healthy day to every one of us. I hope everybody is doing well and okay. As we know, last October 10, we celebrated the World Mental Health Day, and we believe that every one of us deserves to take a mental health break. We understand that this pandemic has brought us thinking a lot of things. We've undergone so much stress, and it is rare that we experience peace and relief in everyday things we have to get done, especially this time of the pandemic. In the spirit of celebrating Mental Health Week, we have prepared various topics for you to enjoy in the following days. So in 2019, Republic Act 11036, known as the Mental Health Act, was passed into law. This act enables a national mental health policy for the purpose of enhancing the delivery of integrated mental health services, especially in the communities. So, in Presidential Proclamation number 452 declares that the second week of October of every year as National Mental Health Week, in accordance with the celebration of the World Mental Health Day on October 10. So at the press briefing by the DOH last October 2020, the national prevalence reflects that at least 3.6 million Filipinos have mental health conditions. And in less than 2 years in the pandemic, numerous reports on suicide, depression, and other mental health problems have surfaced. So here in Caraga region, in 2020 and 2021, we have several consultations, 440 in the 2020 and 205 in 2021. And according to the data by the Philippine National Police in Caraga region, we have several incidents of suicide. And here in Caraga region, we only have 5 psychiatrists, but to adapt, because of the lack of specialists in our region, we have conducted, the Department of Health, Caraga has conducted mental health gap action program to train personnel at the local level. And currently, we have trained 53 practitioners composed of doctors and nurses. For psychiatric comorbidities or referrals, we have here several referral facilities. We have in Agusan del Norte Provincial Hospital, DO Plaza Memorial Hospital, Caraga Regional Hospital, Adela Serati Memorial Medical Center, and of course, we tap the Institute of Psychiatry and Behavioral Medicine of the Southern Philippines in Davao City. So in the midst of the pandemic, we also established a DOH Historieta helpline to cater calls specific for mental health concerns. We can only provide basic psychological first aid and can assist you to refer for referral to appropriate help. And this is only open every Monday to Friday at 8 to 5 p.m. So this year, the DOH Center for Health Development Caraga launches a week-long webinar series that aims to discuss significant mental health topics and different arising issues on concerning mental health during the COVID-19 pandemic. We have different resource speakers from different expertise in the field of mental health for the 3-day activity. For today, we have dealing with toxic environment, managing stress, and enhancing resiliency. And tomorrow, we have caring for carers, no? Building one's well-being while serving others. And the last day, we have taking care of your mental health during the pandemic. For now, I would like to invite everyone to enjoy our webinar series with the theme Mental Health Care for All, Care for Yourself, and Care for Others. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Doc Agnes. It's important that we are all aware and we know what to do. As mentioned by Doc Agnes earlier, we actually have the DOH Historieta helpline, which is open 8 to 5 on Mondays to Fridays, except on holidays. And you will see the numbers flashed on your screen. We have Smart and Globe hotlines, which you can always call, and somebody will be able to help you out. Again, that's the DOH Historieta helpline. In case you have concerns to talk about, we have a designated hotline for you to call, Smart and Globe, Mondays to Fridays, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. All right, so Mom Agnes, Dr. Agnes actually pointed out it's very pressing indeed that 3.6 million Filipinos have mental health conditions, and that number has risen while we were experiencing the pandemic. Sabi ko nga kanina, no one has it easy during this pandemic. Of course, we have cases of suicide, depression, and other mental health issues that were shown earlier, and the numbers are really not good. It's important that all of us becomes champions and advocates in helping out our society to help spread mental health awareness. So, as mentioned earlier, we have invited experts in this field to discuss certain topics that will help us be informed, that will help us become more aware, and will contribute to our knowledge towards the idea of mental health. We have invited very important speakers to join us today. Our first speaker for today's topic, discussing managing stress in the midst of toxic work environment. He graduated BS Psychology and Masters in Psychology at University of San Carlos. He got his Doctor of Philosophy in Psychology as summa cum laude in University of Santo Tomas. And as a researcher, he regularly published and reviewed studies in different ISIs and Scopus Index journals. And as a clinical practitioner for more than 2 decades, he helped develop several therapy centers all over the country. He also was the first psychologist to develop a center providing counseling and therapy to OFWs and foreign expatriates in Macau, China. He has been active in providing interventions for years to post disaster survivors, prostituted women and children, survivors for child maltreatment, victims of gender based violence, OFWs, left behind children, and most recently to conflict exposed survivors and soldiers of the Marawi siege. Of course, as an academician, He taught in the University of San Carlos, University of Santo Tomas, Universidad de San Jose in Macau, China, and the Mindanao State University. He still conducts several trainings and workshops on mental health and psychological well-being here and abroad. Ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker for today's mental health series. Let's welcome Dr. Emilu Mordeno.
Hi, good morning, Dr. Cesar Sicacion, RD, good morning. Dr. Agnes Coliantes, good morning. The organizers of this webinar. Good morning, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good day. I hope that I can share to you some things with regard to the mental health of individuals, particularly in the workplace. So, the title of my presentation is actually managing stress in the midst of work environment. Okay, so I will be talking in a capsule. I will be talking about about stress, in the workplace, and on the second part, how would we manage stress in the workplace? So the basic notion here is first to understand what is stress, because of course we knew in research, as we have published a number of ISI and Scopus Index journals, particularly about stress and traumatic stress. What we actually learn is that the first thing that we need to know, what we need to do rather, is to be aware of what is happening in us, right? So that's basically my job now. On the first part of this talk will be talking all about stress, what is stress, what are the precursors of stress, so on and so forth. So let's start. Okay, let's first go to the stress facts, context within the COVID-19 pandemic. Why is it that we need to look into this one? Because looking at figures pertaining to stress prior to the pandemic, is already alarming. However, looking at the recent facts, with regard to the prevalence or the prevalence of stress and other mental health disorders, it's quite. There is a sense of urgency. There is a sense of emergency in a way that we need to address. We need to address a certain crisis within a crisis, or what we call as a mental health crisis within the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. So, COVID-19 pandemic drastically changed one's social infrastructure and way of life, from the rituals of celebrating life to the rites of bemoaning death. So before, when we celebrate birthdays, when we celebrate festivals, when we celebrate a lot of things, it's face to face, right? And right now, when we celebrate the rituals of celebrating life, it's totally different. The rites of bemoaning death, our death rituals, are also changing a lot. Before, we have to send off somebody as he or she passed away. We had some rituals in order for us to have closure of and celebrate actually the person's life. But right now, it's totally different. We could not even say goodbye to people who are already passing away. Okay, so stress is a precursor of common mental disorder, and that is what we need to understand. First, it's just a simple stress. First, it will just be, ay, wag na, stress lang yan, di ba? So, that is actually true. Sometimes we can manage stress and we live a life, a healthy life, a happy life, so on and so forth. And I will discuss that later also. However, we need to be cautious because a simple stress can actually be a precursor of more serious mental health disorder. And we knew that in research, we knew that in my clinical practice. So let's talk about common mental disorder within the context first of the global prevalence of mental health problems, and from 2016 until 2020, because that's these are the available data. If you look at this one, let's talk only of two common mental health disorder: depression and anxiety. If you look at this one, 2016, the global prevalence of depression is around 2.45%, or ranging from 2.45% to 2.49%. However, However, in 2020, it increased substantially to 28%. So if you look at this one, the global prevalence, it's quite already threatening, right? In another common mental health disorder, which actually is very much related to stress, this depression and anxiety are basically twins for stress, right? I mean, these are actually most likely consequence of stress. So from 2016 to 2019, the global prevalence is around 4.01% to 4.05%. However, in 2020, that's the start of the pandemic, we have 26.9%. So if you come to think of it, the percentage change in the prevalence rate of major depression globally is 1,024.5%. That's the increase. No? So we have to take note of this because our work stress is very much related also into social context. Okay. Another, if you look at the increase of the anxiety from 2006, ranging from 2016 to 2018, then 2020, it increased around 564.2%. Meaning to say that, it's not, this is really a very discomforting, no? This is a discomforting statistics that we are actually looking at. Okay. Now let's go closer to home. No, Southeast Asia prevalence of anxiety and depression. So the Southeast Asia supposed to be had the lowest depression. No, in contrast to global mental health prevalence. No, so we have from 2016 to 2019 is just 1.3 to 1.35%. However, we have the biggest increase in 2020 with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. It increased to 33.7%. That's basically 1 out of 3. That's in Southeast Asia. With regard to anxiety, because these are twin mental health disorders, with regards to anxiety from 2016 to 2018, supposed to be we are lower, in contrast to global prevalence. That's from 3.84% to 3.91% from 2016 to 2018. But in 2020, it increased to 31.9%. In summary, if you look at the percentage change in the prevalence rate of major depression in the Southeast Asia continent, it increased to 2,396.3%. And that's the biggest increase globally in terms of different regions of the world. So the 2,396.3% is really very alarming for depression. We have problems in depression even prior to the COVID. If it increased to 2,396%, we are actually in a very red, spot situation. Then in our anxiety increased also to 715.86%. The increase is actually higher than the increase globally, in terms of the Southeast Asia. Now, how about the extent of common mental health problems in the Philippines? Now, what I will be presenting to you are actually studies, but they are not actually representative to the entire Philippine situation. We still need to look into an epidemiologic study pertaining to the common mental health problems in the Philippines. But these statistics are already, giving us a lot of insight. Okay. In global prevalence in terms of in terms of depression rather, it's 28%. In Southeast Asia, it's higher, 33.7%. In the Philippines, I put there Philippines A. That's the study of Dr. T et al. In UP Manila. Sorry, it's around 16.9% in terms of depression. If you look at Philippines B, with a higher number of respondents, 6,261. That's our study. In 2021, but it was collected in 2020, it's around 28.4%. So if you look at this one, there might be a discrepancy of results with regard to our study and Dr. T et al. Study, but actually, I guess there could be a myriad of factors, but there are two things that we observe with our study and with, of course, the T et al. Study. The T et al. Study from UP Manila gathered their information mostly coming from Luzon area. And then it was gathered in the start of 2020 until the middle of 2020, meaning to say the starting point of COVID-19 pandemic until around, at the middle of the year. Our study, mostly our respondents are coming from Visayas and Mindanao, and we collected data also from the middle of the month, middle of the year rather, until late of 2020. That meaning to say, in fact, supposed to be this will decrease, but I guess this was also given. This was also the time when the variants are already here, making probably people more depressed or more anxious, right? But of course, the news about vaccine was already in this period of data collection. In terms of anxiety, global prevalence rather is 26.9%. Southeast Asia is 31.9%. In the Dr. T et al.'s study, it's 28.8%. That's higher actually than our study. That's Philippines B, around 20.4%. So meaning to say, in Visayas and Mindanao, probably we have lower anxiety but higher depression. I mean, that's also very troubling, but it's not really low anxiety, right? Because 20.4% is, well, in the field of epidemiology, that's very, very high. Okay, so now let's look at stress. What are the studies that we conducted pertaining to stress? Sometimes we call it stress or psychological distress. So we conducted a number of studies, actually around 5 ongoing studies. With regards to teachers in Region 10, and I believe this is very important because we have audience in the Facebook who are actually coming from DepEd and CHED. So in the study with around 1,110 respondents, CHED, I'm meaning to say this is actually in the tertiary level, just CHED Nisha, college instructors and faculty members, around 55.59%, meaning to say 1 out of 2 individuals are already suffering from severe stress. That's 55.59% in terms of estimated prevalence. Among counselors, even us, among counselors, among counselors and psychologists, around 41.98% are suffering already from stress. That's basically one half also. Among coaches and trainers, these are supposed to be lower because of the fact that they are physically healthy, physically active, so on and so forth. But although they are low in contrast to other groups, but the fact is they still have around 34.8%. That's 1 out of 3, estimated prevalence of coaches and trainers and PE teachers, in Mindanao area. I mean, the good thing in these statistics and the studies that we conducted are basically coming from northern Mindanao or Mindanao area, not in Visayas, but more in Mindanao area. With regard to DepEd, teaching and non-teaching professionals, we collected data around 2,266. The publication is actually underway. It's not really different from those who taught in tertiary education. It's around 51.36%, estimated prevalence. And then among healthcare workers, that includes also Caraga, it's around 48.28% in terms of psychological distress, or sometimes we call that as severe stress. Okay, so if we look at these statistics, the fact is we have around 1 out of 2. So around 50% are actually suffering, except for the coaches and trainers and PE teachers. But most of us are 1 out of 2 are basically suffering already from severe stress, moderate to severe stress. Okay. Now, in terms of professional workers and HR practitioners, among industrial workers, I mean, this is ongoing. The number of respondents is quite low, around 68.8%. And they are actually have higher severe stress because of the fact that they are not stable with their jobs. And we have conducted a number of data collection, rather, and I hope that we could finish this within this year. Among HR practitioners specifically, those who are actually in HR, are also suffering. 43.4% of them can consider themselves estimated. This is still an ongoing study. Estimated to have around severe, moderate to severe stress. So in short, in Mindanao, in northern Mindanao, we have 1 out of 2. Okay, and that these are actually facts. These are studies that we conducted and are actually on their way of being published in international journals. Okay. So, what are other stress facts? Number one, COVID-19 pandemic pushes job stress to the limit. We knew that, right? With the statistics that I have presented to you with the anxiety and depression, these twin disorders, increasing a lot by 100-fold, sometimes 1,000-folds, or in case of Southeast Asia, 2,000. No, somehow it reflects the precursor, which is actually stress. Meaning to say, if we have so much increased with anxiety and depression, it is safe to presume that the stress is actually increasing double time, because not all individuals who are distressed are likely to suffer from anxiety or depression. But those who are suffering definitely are already suffering from severe stress. That's the presumption, because it is actually a precursor, no? And we have a lot of studies to back that up. Now, even in my clinical practice, a person who is severely stressed may not have depression and anxiety. But if they already reach to the cut-off of anxiety and depression, most likely they are already suffering from prolonged chronic stress. No? So that's basically repetitive stressor, to a point that it becomes a symptom of anxiety and disorder. A United Nations report labeled job stress, particularly job stress, as 21st century disease. Stress-related illness and injuries account for almost 3/4 of employee absenteeism. Now, kung ano yan, kung 3/4 yan, can you imagine that's 75% cost? If we will try actually to monetize that it will become thousands or even millions. No? So let's look at also stress prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Because of course I presented to you the stress facts with this or during this pandemic. Now, with regard to stress facts prior to COVID-19 pandemic, so that we could understand more. Actually, stress is already a problem globally, even without the pandemic. In European Union, stress cost accounts to an average of 0.27% of their GDP. That costs around already billions of euro. In United Kingdom, particularly, because they are no longer part of EU, stress cost amounts to 0.7% of GDP. Now, how come that they have this percentage? Because it's very easy. Because in European Union and UK, like the Philippines, we are still starting with a mental health law. You can file a leave of absence due to a mental health concern or stress. No, so they actually just compute basically the number of hours, and then they multiply that with the rates per day, and then they found out that it's around 27% of their gross domestic product. In United Kingdom, stress costs around 0.7% higher, of GDP. In United States, stress cost accounts for 0.3% of the GDP, but mental health accounts already for 1.3% of GDP. Now, this is what what I have been presenting to you. Prior to the pandemic, it's already a problem because it constitutes already 1.3% of the GDP in United States and 0.3% basically based on stress. And why is it that this is already a problem? Because if you look at that statistics that we had, it's still around 1 point something percent. Then it jumped to 27%. No, so meaning to 27 to 30%. So meaning to say, the cost of mental health now definitely increased substantially, like 1,000-fold. Why? Because even prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, stress is already very costly in terms of the GDP. No? In Sweden and Denmark, stress accounts for 0.07%. And most of us, even among us psychologists, we always have this joke that we have to migrate to Sweden and Denmark because their stress only is around 0.07% of their GDP, meaning to say it's almost zero, and that's amazing. But of course, Sweden is Sweden, Denmark is Denmark, Netherlands basically is Netherlands, right? So I guess they have lower stress than the United States, UK, or even in Southeast Asia, or even in the Philippines. Now, what are the stress roots? We need to understand what is stress and why do we really need to be experiencing stress. So number one, truth about stress. You cannot eliminate all the stressors in your life. No one can. But you can dramatically reduce them and have much a better quality life. If I will ask you now, who among you haven't experienced stress? If somebody will raise their hand, then congratulations. Why? Because you are an exception to human race. Probably hindi ka tao. No? Because stress is there. If we are happy, there is eustress. If we are sad, we have distress. If you are enjoying a lot about your jobs, about your partner, and you felt that you are at the peak of heaven, that still is a stress. Because the truth is we could not prevent stress. And we could not even minimize stress, because in everything we do, there will always be stress, or else there will be no efforts whatsoever. So you could not eliminate them. As a human being, we are prone to stress. That's why we are also built to cope with stress naturally. Okay? Another stress truth. Number 2, work in the 21st century is like raising a baby who demands everything at this very moment. And that is also true with the invention of cell phones, of course, right? With the smartphones we have nowadays, with Facebook, social media, Twitter, Instagram, okay, Gmeet, StreamYard, right? We are actually accessible anywhere. If we are in the beach, it's there. Unlike before, when we have the analog phone, if it is busy, then you could not contact the person. No? Napanay style, ito unang kuwaon lang ang phone, unya ibutang ato sa ihang, kaya para pag may manawag, busy. But you could not do that anymore now. Why? Because if you will send the message to Facebook, the person will know if you have read it or not, if you have seen it or not, right? And it is not possible for you just to ignore because it's already there, right? So we can be accessed anywhere and anytime. No, it's like, as what I've said, it's like raising a baby who demands everything at this very moment. Number 3, our work days have expanded into our personal lives. We can no longer leave work at the workplace, and this is very true with the pandemic situation right now. It has been a little while, even before the pandemic, but this is already the mainstream right now. Work at home and domestic responsibilities will mix together, and we could not prevent that because we are staying on the same roof. The moment we have our personal lives and our work lives mixed together under one roof, then definitely we will have stress. Now, it's a little bit OA to say, oh, I worked hard in the, sa bahay. And then when I saw my children, ma-relieve yung stress ko. I mean, that's true, but not at all times, especially if it's already deadline time, right? That we should not, as what I've said, we should not deodorize, or we should not, sugarcoat our stress, because the more we sugarcoat it, the more it will come out. No? It will increase its severity. Now, customers, bosses, or clients, bosses and coworkers can contact us anywhere, as what I've said, at home or even in the middle of the night. The dividing line between workplace and personal lives has become almost non-existent. And this is actually very, very true nowadays. That's why I said this in my seminars, that sitting is the new smoking. It is dangerous to your health. And we could not prevent that because we sit while we work, because we are now working at home, working at office, and it's really very dangerous to one's health, according to World Health Organization. What else? Stress truth. Stress results from an imbalance between demands and resources. We become stressed when demands exceed our resources or ability to cope and mediate stress. Meaning to say, if the demands at work is quite high, then most likely our resources is quite low, then there is what we call an exceeding, increase of demands more than the resources, and automatically, based on studies, it will result into discomfort and stress. However, while we feel stress and discomfort rather, because our demands exceed our resources, we have also to think that even that will be amplified rather. No, that could be amplified by the fact itself by the way rather we interpret and appraise basically stressful event. No? So meaning to say, sometimes the way we interpret events, not sometimes, but all the time, stressful events as we interpret it, or interpret these are actually more important. The interpretations are more important than the event itself. And why is this why is this true? Because of the fact that before any excessive demands will come to us, we have first to recognize the value that these demands are actually very high. No? So the way we interpret is actually also, the source of our stress symptoms. No? And I was reminded of a number of situations with my clients, no, particularly with young ones. There was this, client A, akong Bisayon para mas feel. Client A, nagbulag. Pagbulag nila, ang client A nako, grabe ka depressed. Kay nga naman, kay pagtanaw niya ang iyang source sa iyang love na wala na. No? Kay nagbulag man sila. So, murag, I can't live if living is without you. O, di ba? So, medyo drama siya. So, client A really got depressed, because it was chronic, and he could not let go of the boyfriend, so on and so forth. So, the feeling was actually depression. Second client, the feeling was very much distressed. Naman. Because my client would say that this is the end of it. I do not know if I can have another boyfriend or another lover. So she was very distressed to a point where she could no longer sleep and is actually suffering from anxiety. That's client B. Person C, not my client, but a friend of mine. Nagbulag sila. Ang iyahang feeling, deadma. And when I ask her, why is it that you are not affected with the separation of your boyfriend? And then my friend would say, well, he is already my 10th boyfriend. My 11th boyfriend, I guess. Yeah. My 11th boyfriend. So why should I be, so much depressed, anxious, the people will come and go. A boyfriend, will come and go. So, deadma. The fourth person, person C, another friend of mine, dili siya deadma, kundili, mora siya na-relieve. Why? Because having no boyfriend, it's like, gikuhaan daw siya og tunok sa iyang dughan. So, na-feel niya ang relief. Person E, another friend of mine, not a client of mine, felt so elated and happy. Why? Because without a boyfriend, another will come. And she is very ready to shout at the top of the voice 2 days after the breakup, next please. So, the idea there is that there are several emotions, positive and negative. But the source, basically the situation, or the situation is almost the same. Or the 5 situations are almost similar. But the reactions are different. Why? Because they interpret it differently. And that's still the same as with stress. The way we interpret things basically determines the emotions associated with stress. No? So, what are the dynamics of stress? I will just repeat this and make it very clear. It is excessive demands and pressures higher than workers' knowledge and abilities in the workplace. Right? Kung patatrabahuin ka ng boss at saka online lahat at saka yan, hindi mo alam yung software application, definitely you will become very much distressed. Kung alam mo Zoom at saka Gmeet and then suddenly pinagawa ka ng StreamYard, katulad ko, basically, parang na-distressed ako, So, that's basically stress. Now, where there is little opportunity to exercise any choice or control, that will definitely amplify stress. It's like you are out of control and you don't have the freedom to choose, something like that. I'm not referring only to it overall, but basically in the work setting. Like, for example, work at home. Sometimes you wanted to go back and have it, face to face every day, 8 hours a day. But the landscape already changed. The job landscape already changed. The employment landscape already changed because of COVID-19 pandemic. And you don't have that much control and you don't have that much of a choice. So that becomes amplifying, that becomes a source of amplifying stress. The third one is where there is little support from others. You know, naghirap ka na nga at saka wala kang support from others. When you are working at home, yung partner mo ang ingay, ang mga bata nag-online classes, everybody seems to be busy at their work and also coping with online work. And then you are left alone and you are not actually interacting also with others, even in a digital platform. Definitely, you don't have a support, it will amplify more the stress. Okay? Now, let's talk about causes of workplace stress. Now, this is very important. Why? Because the idea here is that we need to understand the causes of workplace stress. Because understanding and becoming aware is actually the beginning of managing stress. So what are our work-related stress according to research? Number one, physical condition. Sa office, okay. Sa bahay, hindi. Lack of personal space. Right? That can be a source of stress in your work area. Because ang work area nyo ngayon, dalawa na, di ba? So, one is actually sa office, pangalawa sa bahay or anywhere. So, pag andun ka sa office, wala, I mean, you interact with people. But there is also that fear. Because the physical condition could be tantamount for you to be infected with COVID-19. I am fully vaccinated. Ako nga fully vaccinated, na COVID pa rin. I survived COVID. But the idea there is the fear of being infected is there. And if you go to the office and the office is not prepared, I'm not referring to any office for that matter, no? But if the office is not prepared and not observing the minimum health protocol or protocols, then you have really a problem of this fear of being infected. So the physical condition may not really be good if it is not prepared. Now, pagpunta mo naman ng bahay, wala ka namang space masyado. Or if you do have space, you have hard time actually trying also to design your own workspace because you need to have a private space for you to work on, right? So that can be a source of stress. That's why we need to arrange that along the way. Second, technology. Ang dami kong mga friends, no? Regional directors for that matter in several agencies in Northern Mindanao, nag-early retirement. Why? Because they could no longer cope with the technology. Yung isa nga sabi, early retirement, 60 years old. Sabi niya, I will retire anymore because I could not imagine myself working at home facing the computer. And, she belongs to the baby boomer stage. No? Okay lang if you belong to the X or Gen X, Gen Z, or Y or Z, right? Because you are already savvy with technology. But how about those individuals who belong to the baby boomers generation? Or even to those Gen X, Y, Z? Not all applications are friendly, right? Not all work applications are friendly. Isang client ko nga, a top sales rep in the Philippines, in a very known drug company, nag-resign. Top sales, all over the country. Nag-resign. Why? Kasi sabi niya, yung technology ba ng company, it's like the company is already 24 hours a day monitoring you, including your sleep. Kasi nagla-log-in siya. Di ba? Yung computer niya, na-monitor yan lahat sa office. So pag natutulog siya, wala movement yung computer niya, meaning to say, the person is at rest. But the record or the log-in schedule is also there. No? So sabi niya parang, I felt being monitored 24 hours a day, of course. No? That's it's not that he was afraid, but he seems to be very much distressed. He was very much stressed by the fact that parang wala na siyang life space. Sabi niya, no? Wala na akong life space daw. So basically that is another source of stress. Another one is work roles. And we knew already, right? We are very familiar with this terrain. Nung una, among teachers, when they create when they create lesson plans, it's easier kasi dali lang. Every year, pabalik-balik lang yan. With current applications right now, hindi na. Yung test papers mo, kailangan i-change yung mga test items mo sa mga test papers mo, kailangan i-change yan because naka-send na yan sa PDF. Basically, it's open to the public already. So the role and the function you had with your work is actually changing because of the change also of technology, change of the physical condition, and change of the era. This is a new era. COVID-19 is a new era. The post-COVID-19, hopefully, will be another era. It will not be pre-COVID, but it will be a different era altogether. And then here comes another fourth problem, work-related stress, job design. Why is it that I am talking about this? Because I wanted you to understand where or what are the sources of your stress. Job design, ito yung mahirap. Di ba? Kasi, sabihin na natin, okay yung company, okay yung organization, okay yung government agency na yan. Kasi they are very diligent. Like for example, I knew of a regional director in civil service, 2.5 days. Work days sa office, 2.5 sa bahay. Okay naman yan, di ba? Pero kaso, at first they thought that it will run smoothly. And then later they realized it did not run smoothly. Why? Kasi yung 2.5, hindi naman straight yun. I mean, they thought that it could be straight 2.5 days. But it never worked. So what they did is one day, then work, another day, then work, then 0.5 pagka Friday. And they thought it was okay. And then it changed again because there were a lot of requirements in the job. So kahit 2.5, they are still changing because the job design or the job layout, we call that in industrial psychology, changes along the way depending upon the demands of the job, depending upon the schedule of other offices in the job. So it changed basically almost every month, and that is actually very, distressing. It's becoming very stressful because you have to cope every time there is a change. So that is another source of stress. You need to understand that, abnormal situations as of this moment are actually normal because of abnormal reactions rather are actually normal because of abnormal situations, as of the moment. Okay. Another source of stress in inadequate training and preparation. Kahit, for example, I'm a professor. I'm a full professor in MSU IIT, and I do have a lot of consultations also. But our applications are actually changing also. We have Moodle, then we realized that it is okay, it was okay. Actually, it's okay. But once the website of the university goes down, we don't have classes. So what happened is that the teachers were going back to Google Classroom. It's very okay. But the monitoring also of the attendance and all the grades may have also problems. So we go for the discussion per se, we go for Gmeet. And then Gmeet is of course insufficient, especially with breakout sessions. Wala naman kayong breakout sessions. So what happened is that nag-Zoom until such time that wala na talagang specific. It's a hybrid. Nag-Google Classroom, nag-Moodle, nag-Gmeet, nag-Zoom. Depende na lang sa activities. And what does it imply? It implies sufficient competency of those applications. So ano mangyayari? We always feel, at least ako, I always feel that there is a need to learn because I felt that there is inadequate training and preparation in my part every time that I go with certain applications online. And then we realize later that, okay na yung Facebook, okay na yung FaceTime, okay na yung Gmeet. And then we realize later that there is this clause, that you have to approve, diba? The license approval, that our, classes could actually be stored and transmitted to the parent company, which is actually FaceTime, Facebook, Gmeet, etc. So there's also an issue of confidentiality. There is also an issue of wanting not to share, right? So that these are actually a little bit, not a little bit, but very stressful, because we keep on changing applications in order to suit our needs and our students' needs or our clientele's needs. So that's a source of stress. Another one is pay reduction, and I'm particularly talking to issues in DOLE and in private schools, where they have low academic loading, or even in state universities and colleges, They have low academic loading because it's already online. So their payment, their salary is being reduced. No, good for us, no, kung government agencies, because we could not do that. But for private companies or even to other agencies, yun. Pag wala nang masyadong need, then they will reduce because it's already online. And pay reduction is very, very, according to studies in Vietnam and Indonesia, this is actually the most profound source of stress. No? Another one is workload and workplace. This is actually, as what I've said, this is a little bit, already understandable, no? Because the workload is increasing because of the fact that it's already online, and the workplace is changing. It's intermittent, no? So it's really a source of stress. Another one, according to studies, is job content. Before your job is like this, only with certain job specifications. And then COVID-19 came, you need to increase the job specifications, the job content. And then while the COVID is already still ongoing and there are new variants, the job specification increased more. So the job content, nawala siya, andyan siya pero nadagdagan. No? So that's another source of stress. Okay? Okay, that's already done. Another source of stress is job insecurity. What is job insecurity? Especially for contractual workers, especially for non-tenured or non-regular jobs, no? Ngayon may trabaho ka, baka next year wala ka na, no? So, or mababawasan ang trabaho mo. So first, this is, if you notice, this is work-related, this is person-related. What do you mean by person-related? Yung person-related is actually, para siyang, it's not just how you are contributing to stress while you are working in an organization. Okay, how is this, how your person-related issues actually compounding work-related issues? Okay, so this is not generic personal problems, but this is actually related to you as a person, compounding work-related stress or job stress. First is job insecurity, because this pertains to work. You don't have certainty with regard to your tenure. Second, a ladder with no step, meaning to say, sometimes there is a need for, there is no guidance whatsoever in how we move forward with our career. Kasi, di ba, may career path yan. Pag may career path yan, most likely, within sa organization lang. Meaning to say, this is not a career path. We will discuss that later. But this is a career path within the organization. So, you started with this one, then increased with the salary grade with this position, and increasing salary grade with this position. And then COVID-19 happened. Alam natin yan. Di ba? Most of the funds were actually utilized for the vaccines. So, yung ibang positions hindi na-approve ng DBM, yung iba hindi pending upon the approval of DBM kung may pera. Right? So, I was an HR for I was an HR director, no? Hiniram ako ng HR to become the director for a number of months, and I could really see what do we mean by a ladder with no step. Of course, nowadays meron na naman approved, right? Pero hindi ganun kabilis, unlike before, no? Because probably of budget considerations. So, some sort, walang mentoring na kung ano yung career path mo within the organization. Third, sense of foreshortened future. May kulang yan. Sense of foreshortened future. Yung personal mo, this time, kasi ang ladder with no step is coming from the organization. You do not, the employees are actually now confused because of the fact that somehow it's related to the availability of items or availability of positions, so on and so forth. Pero itong sense of foreshortened future, sarili mo yan. Probably affected by a ladder with no step, but yung sense of foreshortened future, para bang hindi mo ma-imagine ang 10 years from now that you still belong into this organization. A lot of my clients have that problem. They could not imagine themselves even 5 years from now with the same organization. Why? Because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Hindi nila makita masyado, ano ba kayang future ko 5 years from now? Will I still be doing this one? And why is that? Because there is so much uncertainty. There is so much, there's so much, mess with the current reality of the world that it seems that, how to cope with it personally, for us to survive is not to look at the future, no? Not to look at years from now, but rather to look at what is in the present, one day at a time. I mean, that's also very good. That's one way of natural coping. But the idea there is that if it becomes a habit, if you will ask the person, how do you picture yourself 5 years from now? Hindi sila maka-answer or maka-respond. No? Most of my clients who are actually suffering from depression would say, I don't want to think about that, doc. Why? Because probably next week I will be infected with COVID-19 and I will die. Well, that's also reality, right? So the idea there is that there is a sense of foreshortened future. This time at work, parang hindi mo makikita yung years from now in this organization. Another one is career development. It's not within the organization, but this may actually affect you because it's the entirety of your career. Where will I go? If I am a psychologist, where will I go? What is my career path? Not only within the organization, but the entirety of your career. And there is another person-related issue here: insufficient resources, no, due to economic downturn at home. Why is it that I put it here? This is not yet research. This is not an outcome of research, but this is basically coming from my clinical practice. Why? Kasi yung asawa nawala ng trabaho. So yung salary mo na supposed to be sufficient lang because your partner is also having work, and then suddenly nag-downsize ang company nila. So yung salary mo hindi na siya sufficient. And it adds to work stress because you need to work more and you need to work harder in order to compensate the loss of income sa partner mo, because there is an economic downturn at home, and it definitely will affect work stress. Okay? And then you have what we call as social relationship. So we have work related, person related, and then social relationship related. There are only two things with the COVID-19 pandemic. One, lack of social relationships. Walang face-to-face. May nag-resign nga from DBM regional director, no? Kasi naguluhan siya, not from this region, from another region. Naguluhan siya, why? Kasi feeling niya very sad, 63 years old. I felt so sad because when I entered the office, I could no longer see the joviality of my work environment. Why? Because I can only see half of them every time. And then the day after, another half of them. So I could not sense anymore the what is supposed to be a jovial work environment. So there seems to be a lack of social face-to-face relationship. There seems to be a lack of social relationship. No, wala. So yun, it caused a lot of stress. However, if there is also social relationship, the relationship is also becoming toxic. And I guess this is the title of the forum. No? Toxic environment means toxic relationship. And that is really a problem, right? So, according to studies by Orloff, I want to share this because even if it is COVID-19 pandemic, this is very relevant. What makes the environment toxic is actually due to emotional vampires. What do you mean by emotional vampires? Vampira yan, no? Vampira. These are actually individuals who are your colleagues who are actually affecting you and giving you so much stress. This is social relationship related. Ngayon nga, COVID-19, walang social relationship. Kung meron man, toxic din. So what are emotional vampires? These are people who can drain your energy and suck you dry for a while. So, basically, it's a person who changes your mood for the worse just by being around. No, meaning to say, they are actually, quote-unquote, absorbing your energy. So, what are the indicators if you are talking to emotional vampires? even online. Number one, after talking, you suddenly becoming tired and would desire to have an immediate nap. So if you felt that way, then probably you just have talked or conversed to an emotional vampire. Do not blame them. No, of course, sometimes we would blame them. It's okay. No, but do not blame them because the reaction is actually your own responsibility, and I will discuss that later. Motivation to work will take a nosedive. I guess you have experienced that. Ako, I usually experience that. Pag may kausap ka, and then suddenly you are no longer motivated to work, parang pagod ka na. So, meaning to say, you just have actually had a conversation with what we call as emotional vampire. No? Kinuha lahat. Number 3, becoming surprisingly hungry and would binge on carbs and comfort foods. I guess you are aware of that. May nakausap ka, especially among psychologists, no, and counselors, or even human resource practitioners, and I have given a lot of seminars about this one, and they really agree with this. May mga kausap ka na after mong makausap sila or siya, one or two individuals, suddenly you felt hungry that you want to have your lunch break already, and you immediately can imagine eating ice cream, eating popsicles, and all those sweet stuff. Why? Because suddenly you have this binge, the desire to binge on carbs. And why is that? Because you just have had an emotional, a conversation rather, with an emotional vampire. What else? Becoming manic. Oh, meron din ako niyan. I experienced that also before. When you talk to your boss, after talking to your boss, you become so restless. You become so, you could not sit still because you become so manic, unable to relax. Your thoughts are actually flying high, so on and so forth. And then when you will be asked, what are you doing? I am busy. Busy on what? Busy doing nothing. Right? Because that is part and parcel of a response if you have conversation with an emotional vampire. Feeling very negative with the world around you. Meron din yan. Pag may kausap ka, kami kasi, di ba, marami kami kausap. At saka sa office din, gano'n. Pag may kausap ka, at saka yung kausap mo very negative din. Suddenly, you felt also very negative. And you see the world in a very negative manner. No? Meron ding mga ganyan. And then another indicator of emotional vampire, felt being put down, sniped, and slimed. Now, I have had a number of seminars all over the Philippines, and most of the time, I put it there, number 6, because this is actually a common experience in DepEd. And why is that? Younger teachers talking to older teachers or senior teachers or to principals. I'm not referring to any school for that matter. And then all of a sudden, the younger teachers and, supposed to be very motivated. And then after the conversation, parang they are being put down. They no longer are motivated because they felt that they are so inferior with the senior faculty and the principals or the administrators. And they felt, although, di ba, yung mga principal naman, may mga way of talking yan. No? Okay naman yun. Pero, ganon. Yung mga conversation na yan, talagang very distressing yan. They are uplifting you, but at the end, may pero. So, meaning to say, the uplifting is just bullshit. So, anong mangyayari? You feel down, you feel sniped, you feel slimed, and suddenly, you don't want to work anymore. No? Meron ng teachers in Northern Mindanao, di ba, committing suicide. Why? Kasi may depression siya. Nung after conversation ng mga senior at saka principal, in several occasions, parang feeling niya pinuput down siya. Bata ka pa kasi eh. Parang ganon. Mas intelligent ka siya eh. Pero what can we do? Oh. Sabi nga ng iba, ay, andyan ka pa sa sperm cell. Kami, we are already working in DOH, we are already working in DepEd, we are already working in CHED. Oh, sa sperm cell pa daw siya. So, feelings put down, sniped, and slimed. What else? Dami, no? Feeling hopeless, useless, and confused where to start. Hindi mo alam. Ang daming instruction. Hindi mo alam tuloy kung paano mag-start. So, that person must be your emotional vampire. Feeling bad, being blamed by the pitfall of others. Yun din. You felt there is a high self-blame, no? And then feeling angry and cursing without really knowing why sometimes, right? You just want to curse, no? Oh. In Bisaya, in Butuan, we have what cursing, bilat inamo, no? Ang Surigao nun, ang biga ng ijo ina. Oh, these are angry and cursing, no? But sometimes we do not know why, because the impact will come later, no? Meaning to say, you have just had a conversation with an emotional vampire. Now, what are the types of emotional vampires? No, we will just describe this, no? So, what are the types? The narcissist. Ano yung narcissist? Regardless of what you are going through, it's all about them. Kahit anong conversation, in the end, sila yung winner. As long as you stroke the narcissist's ego, she purrs like a kitten. Meaning to say, pag sip-sip ka naman, ay gusto niya yan. Mga narcissist yan ng mga vampire. But be careful because you are the one who will feel the impact. Hindi naman siya. But the minute you stop, nursing their ego, beware. The narcissist can get downright vicious. Ito yung mga narcissist na pag may conversation kayo, siya yung hero palagi. Siya yung nasa tama palagi. They also tend to have very little insight in their own shortcomings. They don't know that they are actually doing that. And yet, in the end of the conversation, I am the right one. Oh, I am the best. I am the better. I am the hero. They act as if life revolves around them. So kayo lahat, yan. It's just because, it's not even in the position because there are people who are as low as the salary grade and yet the person is a very narcissist person. Impossible to deal with, right? Because in the end, he is the right one. May mga office mates kayo na ganyan? I am sure meron. Dami siguro. Next, need to compliment him to get his attention or approval. Kailangan mag-appreciate ka palagi para ma-approve yung mga request mo, ma-approve yung mga gusto mong ipagawa sa kanya. No? Constantly steer the conversation back to himself, downplay feelings. They just don't care about your emotions. They will only quote-unquote care about your emotions as long as, in the end, you will appreciate them. If disagreement occurs, they become cold or withholding. Pag nag-away na kayo, mag-block yan. He or she does not need you anymore. Okay? Then, another vampire. So, pag nakausap ka ng narcissist, talagang you will feel weakened. Kasi in the end, yung sarili lang niya yung pinapakinggan. The victim, ito din, I am also a boss. And most of the time, this is the emotional vampire that I always avoid, although I listen still. Yung bang mga tao na palagi sila yung kawawa, poor me, I don't know Google Meet, poor me, we don't have computer applications in our school, poor me, I could not adjust with the online work because so on and so forth. And nobody loves me. Nobody supports me. At first, you feel pity. You feel the sympathy, the empathy. You help the person up. But it's just that the person is incapable of becoming a survivor. No matter how you truly lift her up, she won't even climb out of the victim mode. Why? Because she gets a lot of strokes. There's a Thomas Harris said once that if you will tap my back, if you will appreciate me, if there will be positive strokes, I will be very happy. But I would rather choose negative strokes, being blamed, being pitied. I would rather receive negative strokes than no strokes at all. No? Nasira yung application, nasira yung online, may kapalpakan. Yun, instead of trying to cope and learn something new, yun na. No matter how no matter what I do, I still cannot do it. They are often appear inconsolably oppressed or depressed. Sila ang palaging biktima. Di ba din yan? Nakaka-tire din yan. Palagi na lang biktima. Meron pa mga biktima na nanghihingi ng pera. Binibigyan mo, the day after, 2 days after, nanghingi na naman ng pera kasi wala silang makain. O di magtrabaho kayo, parang gano'n, di ba? Pero nagtrabaho naman kasi office mate mo eh. Di ba? So, they burn out others by the neediness. They are like clinging vine, always blaming, bad luck talaga, yung buhay ko talagang, in Bisaya, mo raw ka ng timawa, kabus og timawa. Oh. Saon man gud nga tawo mi sa pobre nga utin, unsa ba? May pobreng pikoy. Mao man ilang mga term, di ba? Oh. Natawo mi nga among inahan ug amahan timawa, kabus. Therefore kami po timawa ug kabus. And they have a bucket list of complaints. This is actually the victim. And no matter, you deal with her, him, nakakapagod. No? So emotional vampire din siya. Then the other one is the controlling. These people are black and white thinkers. And they want to run your life. So meaning to say, ito yung mga tipong tao na right and wrong lang talaga. Pag right yan, right, wrong, wrong. Wala namang mali yan. Kaso, hindi naman ang life black and white. It's rainbow, right? It depends also on the situation. It depends. I'm not saying that it's okay to deceive or what, but sometimes you need to deal with other people no matter what, right? But these controllers, they have an opinion about everything and they want you to agree 100%. No? Sometimes, I don't want to say this, sometimes meron yan, di ba? Yung tawag natin ng mga tards. Oh. In both ways, in both parties, in all parties, I'm not referring to Duterte tards, Pinoy tards, Yellow tards, ang daming tards, right? But the idea here is the controller in your workplace is that pag may opinion siya about your work and you have to agree 100% because, this should be done. They'll spout unsolicited advice right and left and they tend to be perfectionists, holding themselves and others up to impossible standards. Oh, marami diyan, di ba? Even among us counselors. Oh. May sa mga pari, I have a lot of friend priests who are also controllers, and they are being discouraged to do that already because they wanted the sinners to come to the church, right? But since they are very controlling, they could they tend to manipulate everything, to do what is for them right. Okay? They love being right and they have little insight also about their behavior. They keep claiming to know what's best for you. Kasi I'm already experienced. You follow me, something like that, right? Controlling. They typically have to do things their way, domineering to a point of being suffocating. Do you have an employee, colleagues like that? I guess I could name 2 or 3 out of 10, right? They have some sense of degree of being a controller. And here comes, very famous among Filipinos, the criticizer. A close cousin of the controller, the criticizers know what's best for you and will cut you down for your own good. Now, this is really, I guess, shall we say, this is the most dominant, characteristic of certain employees in the government or in private organizations, mostly in government, I guess. Yung bang the criticizer, lahat na lang i-criticize. They want you to end up feeling inadequate. Kasi sila ang tama. Pag may sasabihin ka, mag-criticize ka agad. Oo. Di ba? They spot a flaw everywhere. They always put others down and they are harshly, even self-critical. Parang walang tama sa ginawa mo. Pati ako, damay lahat. Walang tama. That's the criticizer. Yun nga usually when I conduct trainings like this, makita ko agad yan sa mga participants. Pag naka-receive sila ng mineral water, yun. Sabihin, ang liit ng mineral water. Kung bigyan mo naman ng malaking mineral water, ang lalaki ng mineral water. Kung hindi mo naman bibigyan ng mineral water kasi they can freely go to the pantry, sasabihin naman, bakit walang bottled water? Di ba? May comment talaga yan. Katulad dito, for example, Bakit StreamYard? Bakit hindi bakit hindi ano yan? Gmeet, bakit hindi kahit ano? The same lang yan. Oh. But of course, people will always criticize because they can spot flaws. I'm not referring to those objective criticism for you to improve, but this pertains to criticizing not the work, not really the work, but the worker, the person behind the work. They criticize that. They criticize the behaviors, the person, the attitudes, so on and so forth. Okay. Then the next vampire is the most dangerous one, no, according to studies. They are the most draining of the emotional vampires. Lahat naman draining yan eh. The most common, I mean, for me, among Filipino employee or working environment is the criticizer. But this is the most dangerous one, especially if you give them authority. They split people into good or bad. Ito yung mga taong gusto maghati-hati yung may mga parties. 1 minute you are an angel, the next you are a Satan incarnate. Yan ang splitter. Ngayon, they praise you like you are an angel. 2 weeks from now, they will criticize you like you are Satan incarnate. Kasi, ganito yan. Gusto nila, trying to make factions within the organization. And then, kinakwarel-kwarel niya yan. Once they are quarreling with each other, mga chismosa, they chismis and then they quarrel with each other. They love that. The splitter. Because they split you into groups. The moment you are chaotic and messy, they love that. And why? Because they just love chaos. They can be absolutely vicious. They try to polarize people. They intimidate others by their anger. And then the splitter keep others on emotional roller coaster. Hindi mo ma-predict. Kasi as long as ang gusto niya is actually messy, no? So okay na yan pag messy. He kneels to you like a saint when their needs are met, but curses you like Satan when their needs are not met. Pag may kailangan yan, very good yan. Pag hindi ka na kailangan, wala ka ng silbi, wala yan. Mawawala yan, no? And then this is actually the most dangerous one kasi ito yung cause ng work conflict. No? How will you deal with this splitter? I will tell you how you will deal with them later. No? Because that's the other part. And then ito naman, wala to sa literature. This is based on my experience as a consultant before because I'm an OD consultant for more than a decade actually. So I include this because this is also very common. Aside from criticizer, this is very common also among Filipinos, yung sympathizer. Emotional vampire din siya. Bakit? Ano ba? Yun kasi yung mga taong yan, yes ma'am lang palagi, yes sir palagi. The person exaggerates his being a nice guy to a fault. Parang portraying that this person is a very nice one. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being kind. Pero ito, in-exaggerate niya. Why? Because ultimately ito, hindi mo pwedeng awayin ang nice guy. So, you wanted to criticize him but you could not criticize because the person is a good person, is a nice person. So, anong mangyayari? You will feel tired, you will feel drained, and yet, you could not quarrel with this person even if he commits mistake kasi sympathizer siya, sympathizer mo. You will feel drained as he seems to say everything is fine. Meron nga kaming driver before. Okay na ba yung bus? Okay sir, wala nang problema. Okay sir, na-check na okay sir. Paglabas ng gate, sira. Di ba? So ma-distressed ka but you could not really get that anger out. Why? Because the person is a nice guy. Very distressing. This is hard to deal as you feel guilty if you become more assertive. You can't fight a nice guy. He exaggerates his support and is non-judgmental at fault. He spoils others, over-sympathetic, and refuses to allow those he protects to stand up or grow up themselves. Parang they care so much to a point that they don't want you to grow. Parang ganun. Oh. Tayo, parents din, no? Parang helicopter parents. Oo. Parang they support you because ultimately it will be their advantage. Okay? Ang dami niya, no? Sa Filipino work environment, marami yan. At ito pa ang pinaka-ayaw ko talaga. As a boss, or even as a co-employee, as a colleague. The employee usually limits his work. Hindi yan, lalo na sa internet, lalo na sa online, hindi yan magko-comment. You won't know if he is getting your instruction or not. If he does wrong and you want to correct him, he will just say limited words like, yes, ma'am. If you will ask an open-ended question like, what will you do if this problem will occur? Are you prepared? He will just reply you with a very limited phrase, okay po, or that variation. Maro bitaw walay pakialam. Diba? Uy, malapit na yung deadline. Okay. Uy, nakasubmit ka na ba? Okay. Naka-attend ka ba ng flag ceremony? Wala, okay. Uy, dapat kasi i-check yan sa HR. Okay. O yun, deadma yan. Parang wala, okay lang. Dami yan. Right? Oo. May boss na ganyan. Boss, sorry boss, I have to be absent because, I got COVID. And then the boss would say, okay, you may be absent. E pagkatapos niyan, i-charge doon sa sick leave. And then when you will confront the person, confront the boss, sabi kasi nang ganito na circular order number, etc. And then the boss would say, okay, wala namang gagawin. No? So ganon. A typical person who numbs the emotion and becomes overly detached to the job. Wala nang pakialam sa trabaho. If things will go sideways, they would just don't care. If nampalpak, they just don't care. If they succeed, they also do not care. Deadma lang talaga. So this is another emotional vampire. So what if you have work-related stress, a cocktail of work-related stress, person-related stress, and social relationship-related stress? What will be the effect? Ang dami. Organizational related effects of stress, increasing absenteeism, decreasing work commitment, fast turnover, palagi may nag-resign, loss of motivation, wala nang gana, kasi pagod na. Impaired performance or productivity, increasing unsafe work, yung parang kalos na, careless na sila magtrabaho. Why? Because they are not already motivated due to stress. No? Loss of sense of humor. Yung sa mga tao sa office, nagtawanan na. Yung isa, na-confused pa. Why are they laughing? No? This is actually an impact of stress. Inability to relax and concentrate. What do you mean by that? The person could not even sit still or stand still kasi manic siya. At saka irritable, palaging galit. Yun, marami yan sa government agencies. Tanungin mo lang, ma'am, saan yung office? According to civil service, kailangan may front office, di ba? O, pagtanungin mo naman, ma'am, saan yung office ng HR? Doon. Punta ka lang doon. O, sabi, saan po? Basta doon. Magtanong ka lang sa security. Wow. Grabe, ka-irritable si ma'am. But that's basically due to stress. Ano bang stress niya? Baka hindi siya nanalo ng last 3. Malaki yung talo niya, joke. But basically, yeah, right? Irritability can be an impact of stress. Another one is compassion fatigue, especially among healthcare workers. Nung una, you are very compassionate. Sa dami ng patients, yung being compassionate mo, nag-fatigue siya. Kaya nga, yung second talk, it is also an important talk, caring for the carers. Because if you develop compassion fatigue, especially if you are in the healthcare work, tapos na yan. You could no longer feel compassionate. Kasi you are already overly fatigued or burned out of being compassionate. Mas delikado yan, no? Because if you are already having compassion fatigue, next step niyan, burnout. Next step niyan, early retirement or resignation. Then feeling tired and depressed. Ito, we have that. Palaging nadidepressed na. I guess there's also a seminar on that. And then another one is sleeping problem. And this is actually very important because sleeping disorder, sleeping problem is a gateway to other mental health disorders. Right? Pag depression, anxiety, PTSD, somatization, lahat ng disorders yan, may element talaga yan ng sleeping problem. Pag wala pa yung sleeping problem, okay. Sir, okay naman yung tulog ko. Ilan bang hours yung tulog mo? 14 hours, sir. Hindi. Hypersomnia. Di ba, sleeping problem din yan. Inability to sleep, oversleeping, inability to initiate sleep, to maintain quality sleep. Ayan, lahat. sleeping problem yan. So that can be a gateway of mental health problems. Why? Because if you have sleeping problems, you will get tired, you feel depressed, you could not explain, you could not understand, you could not sustain attention or concentration at work, and then you somatize later. So it somehow, affects everything. And then, of course, somatization. Kaya nga sa Pilipinas, ang sabi ko in my seminars, I have roamed around as a consultant of the SWD before, central office, during the time of Gloria Arroyo. Not Gloria as the SWD secretary, the cardiologist one. I forgot the name. But anyway, ang somatization, ano yan? Lahat ng barangays all over the Philippines, 17 regions, where I usually roamed around at that time, ano talaga yan? Common ang mga liniment. Efficacent oil, Supercent. Kung walang mga liniment yan, Vicks, Broncorab, lahat yan. Kasi it relaxes the body. No? And then, kung wala talaga, may mga gaas yan. Sa San Jose Dinagat before, during my tour there as a project consultant, may mga mga tuba-tuba, di ba? Mga tuba-tuba at saka nilalagay nila sa oil, cooking oil or coconut oil, okay naman yan. Di ba, meron pa tayong favorite na liniment na yung gawa ng mga hilot natin with all those roots and put that into a coconut oil, and it smells good, and it relaxes our body. Somatization are somatic problems without known biological cause. Okay? Now, there are things that we need to really ponder. The effect of stress, or the effects of stress, are cascading. Gradual, but the severity is guaranteed. So, pag sabihin na stress ka, do not minimize that, because it may not affect you now, but it is much sure that it is cascading in different areas of your life. You could not just say, this is just work stress. But it cascades into different areas in life. It will go into your sex life. It will go into your romantic life. It will go into your family life. It will go even into your religious, spiritual life. So the key here is early detection. You have to know if you are stressed or if you are experiencing a stressful situation. Because the moment you had early detection, then you can cope naturally and you can do things in a natural manner without yet consulting a psychiatrist or a psychologist or without yet medication. So the key here is early detection. Now, the second part is a little bit short. So what we do now? What do we do now? So what do we do now? Okay, around 5 minutes, no? Or 10 minutes. Benefits of people suffering in extreme stress. According to my studies in 2013, hindi naman lahat ng suffer ng stress, they will experience all those negative impacts of stress. Meron naman na nag-grow, nag-thrive. They are more resilient. And there are 4 paths in my research in 2013 all over the Philippines. Filipino talaga to. In which they grow 4 ways. No? Number 1, they improve proactive attitude. Nung nag-experience sila ng extreme stress, like for example, COVID-19, then they started having a proactive attitude. They cope well. So what did they do? They prioritize tasks and organize things well. Nung una, wala tayong lista sa schedule. Ngayon, naglilista na. Then they break big projects into small steps so that they could understand. That's a manifestation that you have a proactive attitude. Then you ask help from others in order for you to be, to improve your work more. You are not just isolating yourself, and you're already becoming, able to compromise or willing to compromise with, other members of the group. And then you tend to control well with your distractions, meaning to say, you can already concentrate. That is an indicator that you have what we call as improved proactive attitude. No? Kasi ganito yan. So if you will do this, I guess, it will help a lot in your growth despite the fact that you might have experienced stress. Ito yung importante. It's the coping, not necessarily the source of the stress, but how you cope. And this is, according to my studies, one of the most effective coping way among Filipinos, proactive attitude. Another one that I'm not a religious person, although I believe in God, but I'm not a religious person. But I have to state this because this has been found in my studies all over the Philippines, even to extreme stress, typhoon from, at that, I don't know, for those of you probably who are still aware, the Ormoc flash flood before, not the second one, but the older one, around 1990s, right? Early 90s or middle 90s. I have been there and I saw how spirituality is being actually embodied. Typhoon Yolanda, Typhoon Sendong, Typhoon Vinta, Marawi Siege. There is always this enhanced spirituality or enhancing spirituality. If you believe in a higher up, pray. Pray more, pray hard. So this is a healthy positive coping. Proactive attitude, enhanced spirituality. How do you manifest? If you believe in God, believe more. If you are praying hard, if you are prayerful, pray harder, pray more. Then give importance to ritualization or memorialization. Even if you could no longer say goodbye to loved ones in a way that we are used to, memorialize, ritualize, save a flower, have a candle in your house. Pray for him or her. Because that somehow gives importance to what we call as ritualization or memorialization. Another one is having retreats. Take a break. Pause for a while. Think of things. Pray if you want. Visit church if you want, as long as you are following health protocol. And then communicate to your priests, pastors, or other religious leaders, even in a digital platform. Because according to my studies, enhanced spirituality is one of the most effective coping, healthy coping among Filipinos. Another one is strengthened personal relationship. Several research have indicated that a healthy family life enhances one's mental health and buffers stress. That is very true. A healthy family life is always there, even if, according to recent research, even if it is just for a digital platform, as long as there is a sense of connection, then it is okay. It is strengthening personal relationship, because personal relationship enhances your effective coping with stress. Dealing appropriately and with respect enhances basically working relationship with your colleagues, di ba? So, we are friends, and yet there is a sort of a boundary where you could not penetrate, each other in terms of personal space and personal life. That's what we call, appropriate and with respect. Practical steps. Now, this is not based on research. This is based on, in my experience as clinical psychologist, particularly with emotional vampires, because emotional vampires are everywhere. You don't even know if you are an emotional vampire yourself, right? So number one, be aware of your emotional vulnerabilities. Why? Because emotional vampires will always attack where you are vulnerable. So if you love your children that much, then the emotional vampire will not attack or go against, will try to nurture your love for your children. Oh, you're a good mother. Oh, you're a very appropriate mother. You are a very caring, nurturing mother. Your children are so lucky. So, since you are very caring, now it's time for you to appreciate me. Narcissist. Right? Or, splitter. Oh, you are a very caring mother. Oh, don't be bothered by work, because according to your colleagues, you are no longer working well. But don't bother by that. Why? Because you have your family to take care. Splitter. Right? Ini-split niya. No? So, be aware of your own emotional vulnerabilities, because that's where the emotional vampire will suck you on. Next, identify those people in the workplace. Try to know them. But stay calm and be ready. Because when the emotional vampires will, link to you or will interact with you, respond, do not react. Meaning to say, think and evaluate first before you will give your comments and emotional reaction. Number 3, check your expectations. Do not expect a lot so that the frustration will not also be a lot. And then be assertive, not necessarily aggressive. When you say what you mean, and say what you mean rather, and mean what you say. You don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to be, fighting, or you don't have to be biting. Just set your boundary. Assert. If it will not be granted, it's okay. assert another day. You don't have to be aggressive and hurt other people. Because the moment you hurt other people, that's what the vampires like. The more you will become angry, the more you will become hurt. The splitters, the narcissists, the sympathizers will be loving that scenario. Then set your limits first. As what I have said, we do not know if we are actually the emotional vampire. So how will you know? How will you avoid being an emotional vampire? Set your limits first. Until what extent will you, know personal information? And if you have set your limit first, and then set also others' limits by not, entering unnecessarily to your boundary. Do it kindly but firmly. Wag naman, ito lang yung kaya ko. Wag naman, ito lang ang dapat sa akin. Ito lang yung comfortable ko. I hope that you will understand and sorry for that. Something like that. Right? Give only the needed information. Ito na. Lalo na pag splitter. If he or she will ask information, do not associate that with emotions. Give only what is necessary. Do not give what is not being, ordered to you na kukunin niya. Lalo na pag personal information yan. So there must be an objective evaluation of things that is necessary. Then refuse to take sides, because that's what splitters usually do. They polarize people into factions. Be sure, you are getting the right information. Do not play their games, because the moment you will play their games, you are anchored. You see, they are experts of their games. So if you are not expert to that game, kawawa ka, no? Then specific mutual information is helpful. One thing there in being assertive is actually you can actually say what you really felt about things, no? And then let's say it, but without judging others. No, I feel not comfortable with this. I feel down with what you have said, but I will look into it. Something like that, no? Kasi ang manipulation yan is like an anchor. Pag nakatali ka na, it is difficult for you to distantiate, no? Kasi yan ang gusto nila eh. Okay? Focus on solutions. Yun nga eh. Kasi vampires will suck, lalo na pag yung victim na vampire, will suck only on the problems. Even the splitters and the narcissists, they will only suck on problems because that's where the energy came from. That's where they really wanted to have. And they will feel good about that thing. But if you will focus also on solutions, listening to each other's emotions is good, right? But it is doing things that made us having a good relationship. Listening to how people, they will cry and cry. I mean, this is what I always tell my students in the graduate school when they are practicing already psychology and or counseling. Crying is okay. Emotional expression is okay. But the moment you will be stuck there, your relationship with your client will be stuck. And this is not only to client, to psychologist or counselor relationship. This is also true to the relationship overall. Can you imagine you are good friends and you kept on talking about problems and crying each other? I mean, that's good. But if you kept on doing that, sooner or later, people will be distanciating away from you. Why? Because ang nasa huna-huna nasa isip niyan, ay, andito na naman, iiyak na naman yan. So instead of focusing only on the problems, it's good to focus on the problems, right? So that you can understand better. But do not get stuck on that. Focus also on solutions, especially among the splitters. Kasi sabi niya ganito, at saka dito ganito. So how will you respond to the splitter? Ma'am, sir, if you may, what do you think will be the best solution for that problem? And you know what? They will be shocked. They will be stuck with their own words. That they will bite their own tongue. No? Why? Because splitters are really very good in creating problems, but they are not focusing on solutions. That's why when you confront them, probably kindly, and ask them, what do you think will be the solution of all these problems that you have brought up? Even the victim, they will be shocked. Bakit? Ayaw nila niyan. Because they could not suck an energy out from you. And then focus on your strengths personally. What are the things that you can do? And what are the things that you cannot do? stay on the strength and do the best you can if you will help. Okay? Now, practical self-care tips for individuals who are suffering also with COVID. Be aware of your vulnerabilities, the same. Remember, it takes time to adapt, even if it's already more than a year. Try not to be harsh to yourself. Then, daily routine is. I was a speaker of in Psychological Association of the Philippines. That was 2 weeks ago as a plenary speaker, and I received a lot of email coming also from my fellow psychologists and counselors, talking about what will be your suggestion to individuals to cope well. And I always start with establish a routine. So how can you establish a routine? Plan well your activities and do it, then change it again, then do it again until such time that it will have a sense of routine. Not necessarily you will be stuck to the same schedule, but changing is also a routine. So the moment you establish a routine, there is already a sense of stability, then sooner or later it will provoke a sense of hope that things will become better. No, it will buffer you from so much stress. Okay? Then divide your work clearly. I mean, it's difficult, but it's always a challenge. Working time, non-working time. In non-working time, devote completely to your family. During work time, focus on your office, focus on your tasks. But in non-working time, do well, enjoy every moment. Then, of course, as what the few, there was a video talking about breathing exercise. It depends upon the person. No? It could be 3-3-6, 3 seconds inhale, stop inhaling for 3 seconds, then exhale 6 seconds. It could be 7-4-7. The video, was 4-7-7. It's up. It's actually dependent on the person's breathing routine. No. Then learn new skills and hobbies during non-work time. So do breathing exercise in non-work time. Learn new skills and hobbies. Plantito, plantita, whatever. As long as the tasks would be different from your work. No? However, again, do not expect a lot from you. Like, for example, no, you are plantito and plantita. You wanted to be a plantito and plantita, and then suddenly you could not really let your plants grow. So it's okay. It takes a process. Do not be harsh to yourself. In work time, sorry, for a while. In work time, work in short bursts. That's according to research, and I always tell this because this is it's a new finding, but it's a very nice finding because according to United States, because they have among government they have Baldrige framework, they have ISO and everything, and it's always like this, and they have this common suggestion that when you work in 1 hour, for example, work only for 45 minutes to 50 minutes. Have a clear break for 10 minutes, especially if you are working online. And then a lot of research had made these findings, and they found it more, the person becoming more productive in work and better protected from psychological distress. So in your work time, work in short bursts with clear breaks to maintain clarity of thoughts and to avoid also that much stress, lalo na pag you are in front of a computer. Okay? And again, I usually say this, if we could not move on because of so much stress, it's okay. We are in a pandemic and we have suffered so much from work stress, but it is always better to move forward. No? If moving on is not possible, then still moving forward is possible. It is not escaping from the reality of adversities or pains and tears. In fact, it's the opposite. You recognize all the problems. It is surviving, thriving, continuing amidst all the problems, amidst all the distress, amidst all the messiness, one step at a time, day by day. You can reach us in our Facebook page. Thank you for listening, and I am very much ready for the question and answer portion. Moderator, back to you.
Thank you so much, Doc. That was really an informative session. I've actually noted down a lot of points that were really good and really informative, especially for those who are just starting to, detect early signs in the workplace and in oneself. It's really, really good to note that. I have also seen a couple of questions online from our online viewers. I think we're over 100 viewers right now on our FB Live. We have a question from Miss Lorraine Sacote. Good morning, sir. I have a question po. Personally, sir, on top of all of your commitments, how do you manage everything while maintaining a healthy mindset?
Okay. Commitments are there. I'm a consultant of, I guess, more than 6 organizations. Uh, six research units because I'm social scientist, and I'm also a clinical practitioner. It's difficult, right? But the last phrase one of the last phrases or the last few presentation I have, establish a routine. How can you establish a routine? First, plan your activities. It will change every time. Change will always be there with the schedule of your activities, but that is okay because change is also a routine. So, meaning to say, change is a routine. Plan your activities, do it, and if it is not effective, change it. Then do it again. If it will not be effective again, change it. Change, rechange, modify, remodify, but make that as a routine because once it will make that you will make that as a routine, then you will have definitely a sense of stability. And then I in my last few slides I also said once you have that routine, establish those routine for work and those routine that are not from work. And if you have established a routine at work and you have established a routine at home, make the most out of it when you are actually doing the routine at home. No? So if you have children, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wives, friends, even on digital platform, you go ahead if that will relieve you of stress. Because fun, enjoyment, and self-care is also very important. Self-care is not just about beautifying yourself, huh? Self-care
Yes.
is also about enhancing your mental health or your substance, your content, not only your body. Kasi ang dami nang nagpo-post na self-care. Andun siya sa parlor, nagpa-manicure. I mean, that's part of self-care. But that should not only be focused, no? You should also enhance your way of life, your thinking process. You have to read books, you have to read articles, you have to listen to, self-improvement webinars, so on and so forth, because that is supposed to be a balance between mental and physical health, no? So, yes, enjoy your routine in the non-work time.
That is good. It's really interesting, Doc. I have noted that it's important to be adaptive, and in your as what you've mentioned, it's also very important to establish a routine outside of work, right? Yeah, I think it's also good that you have pointed out that caring for oneself is more than just beautifying ourselves. Thank you so much for answering that question, Doc. We would like to proceed to the next question from one of our viewers as well. This is from Carol Cashon Ebron. Good morning, sir. I'd like to ask a question for being a social scientist, sir. How do you think this pandemic will affect the mental health of employees and work environment post-pandemic?
Okay. Um, I have had a very nice conversation with that last week with fellow psychologists, and I told them that based on research, um, we have what we call, I mean, I don't want to be very theoretical, but we have what we call the theory of allostatic load, and we have also what we call as the theory of network of symptoms. In short, what is this? You know, once we experience stress, our natural capability of coping will always be there. We don't need psychologists, we don't need counselors, we don't even need doctors. As long as our coping naturally will flourish, it will always, we will go back to the normal, we will be happy, we will be well with our life. However, if stress is becoming chronic, meaning to say, the stress is always every day, and it becomes chronic, repetitive, and sometimes severe, then there is a tendency that your body will react naturally still. But if your body could no longer cope because you need help of others or you need to have some resources, most
Yes.
of the time you will still experience that stress. So ang level of stress prior to the pandemic is this one. Yung pinakita kong kaninang statistics. During the pandemic, even it is normal, you have what we call as a new set of normal. So there is always a heightened distress. That the new level of normal stress is becoming higher than the pre-pandemic level. So what will happen here? Because COVID-19 is chronic and
Yes.
it is repetitive because we have a lot of sources of stress. So especially the job stress. What will happen is that it will still increase. Even if the pandemic is no longer there, it will not decrease immediately. It will go back to the new normal that is higher than the pre-pandemic. And what is worst here is that it may take time because there are a lot of research in in SARS-1, MERS-CoV-1 in the literature right now is that the new normal will take years before it will go back to the pre-pandemic level. So we will be up for a heightened distress. And what is worst here is that the symptoms of distress is also affecting each other. So if we don't sleep, we will feel depressed. If we feel depressed, we lack concentration. If we lack concentration, we could not sleep well. So it becomes a loop, a cycle. So even if the cause of the distress, like pandemic, is no longer there, our symptoms are affecting each other already. That's why it's always nice to manage well your stress before it becomes a disorder.
Mhm.
And the idea here is that once there will be post-COVID, in fact, there is already a research in those countries right now who are no longer experiencing COVID-19, quote unquote, not experiencing, although they are still on the threat of having COVID-19, but they are managing well. Nag-stabilize na yung stress, pero mas mataas pa rin kaysa pre-pandemic. So okay na yun. Kaysa, it will still increase to a point where, it will question our own sanity. So as a social scientist, it will not be gone soon, but it will always be nice to have that new normal. Sooner or later, it will go back, hopefully, to the pre-pandemic level in the years to come. Now, so in relation to this webinar, in fact, I'm very happy why this webinar is happening right now. Because the idea here and the advocacy that we have is that depression, anxiety, and other emotional disorders starts with a simple stress. If you manage well, you will not go into that heightened normality of stress. It will go back to the normal homeostatic recovery. As long as you know how to detect stress based on my lecture and know how to manage simple stress so that it will not go back, it will not go higher and becomes that distress to become a disorder. So it will always better to manage well stress, early detection also.
Thank you so much, Doc. I think I know it's a long run. I understand it's a very long process after this pandemic, but that's why it's very important that we push awareness so that every one of us becomes advocates for mental health. We have received another question right here. From Boyong Ganaban. Good morning, sir. Since there is a law on mental health, how will it affect the private and government entities? Is there an IRR for government and private org? A very interesting question, sir.
Okay. I'm an advocate of mental health. That's why I have a lot of organizations. I am a consultant on several companies and organizations. Matagal na yan. Pre-COVID pa yan. Meron na talaga tayong joint circular ng DOLE at saka Civil Service at saka DOH. Actually, ang una niyan is actually just a circular out from mental health law. There is already a circular for companies to have a mental health program. It's DOLE. I could not memorize, but it's series of 2019, if I'm not 2018. I'm not sure. But the civil service for public sector, meron din tayo. In fact, the civil service now is actively collecting because I'm one of the regions there. I'm also a consultant. They are now actively collecting mental health programs in public health sectors. Kaso, hindi naman nagsasubmit yung ibang government agencies, di ba? So, okay lang yan. So, the idea there is that we keep on trying to comply with the requirements. It's already there. You can search that in the net. Mental health program for public sector, civil service circular. memorandum circular. In DOLE, it's a series a circular also order, basically requiring in the private sector mental health programs for employees. And this was also supported by DOH. So medyo, yeah, you can ask your company, you can ask also your agency if they have mental health program because it is required by the law. No. Sige, yeah. I guess I have answered. The IRR there is already I mean the circular is more, I mean, for me, in my opinion, is more specific than the IRR. So yes, you can already seek mental health programs from your agencies if you are coming from the public sector, or companies or organization if you are coming from the private sector.
All right, so I guess that answers our last question for today. Thank you so much. So para sa mga hindi nakakaalam, you can actually approach persons in charge in your office regarding mental health programs. So at this point in time, we would like to thank Dr. Emilu Mordeno for having this discussion with us. It's really a great time being informed of what we should be doing to detect early signs of stress and of course to cope up with it. Thank you so much, Doc. We are now going to proceed with the presentation of certificates for being our speaker for today. So Republic of the Philippines Department of Health Center for Health Development Caraga Certificate of Appreciation is presented to Dr. Emilu Mordeno, RPM, registered psychometrician and registered psychologist, for sharing his valuable knowledge during the webinar series on mental health in celebration of the National Mental Health Week on October 12 at 9 a.m. via Facebook Live, signed by our Regional Director, Cesar Cashon, MD.
Thank you very much for the invitation. And I also would like to appreciate the organizers and the host for beautifully implementing your program.
Thank you so much for gracing this activity. Your knowledge, everything that you have shared with us today, Doc, is really, really appreciated and very important. And of course, we'd like to thank as well our live viewers who gave their precious time in learning and in acquiring this knowledge to spread awareness as well with their teams, with their respective institutions. Thank you so much. So for our day 2, we are going to talk about taking care of our mental health during the pandemic. We have already received a lot of questions relating to taking care of ourselves during the pandemic. We will tackle more about that tomorrow, which is our day 2 for our mental health series. Again, we have 3 days of activity via Facebook Live, so feel free to join, feel free to share. Of course, when you share our live, we have an official hashtag mental health for all, and hashtag you matter. Again, we are emphasizing that it is important that all of us becomes champions and advocates for mental health, as it is all our role to play in making our society a better world, especially now that we are going through the pandemic. My name is Cristel Delmar, your moderator for today's activity. I hope that I see you again tomorrow for our day 2. So we would like to thank, of course, the team behind today's successful activity. We would like to thank DOH CHD Caraga. Of course, we have under the leadership of Regional Director Cesar Cashon, Assistant Regional Directors Sadayla Rakien, and LHS Chief Dr. Ernesto Pareja, MSD Chief Ms. Eileen Sacol, RLED Chief Dr. Glenn Tiangha, Non-Communicable Disease Cluster Head Dr. Agnes Colliantes, Regional Mental Health Coordinator Ms. Rowena Pabia, and the entire Non-Communicable Disease Cluster, the Health Promotion Unit of CHD Caraga, and everyone who made this team, everyone who made this live event, and everyone who joined our live event today. Thank you so much for making this successful. We hope to see you again tomorrow. Once again, thank you. My name is Cristel. Have a great day.